What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Dark Room, where two blind cinephiles illuminate the sighted. I'm Lee Pugsley.
I'm Alex Howard.
And this is a podcast hosted by two legally blind guys for film lovers of all abilities. And today we have a very special guest on our show, someone that both me and Alex have met a few times because he is a live audio describer. So please welcome to the show, Roman Howell, who is a live audio describer and audiobook narrator. Thanks for being here, Roman.
Happy to be here. Hello.
Hello. So let's just dive right in. And I guess to start with, we always think it's interesting to hear about your journey into live audio description and how you found it, what made you interested in it. You know, we realize that everyone has a different story, and that's the cool thing about this world is no one's journey is exactly the same. So would you mind sharing a little bit about your journey into audio description?
Absolutely. So I came out here to Hollywood, basically the same reason everyone else does. I came out here to be an actor, director, and writer extraordinaire, but that didn't exactly work out. So I dipped my toes in every aspect of the industry I could. Found my niche was mostly voice work. People really liked the sound of my voice, and I got a lot of work doing audiobooks. And that was working out pretty well, made union. And then finally, the pandemic struck and everything shut down in Hollywood for a good long time. And then to make ends meet, I was still doing audiobooks, but I was no longer doing any background work because of the pandemic. So I took extra time to work at the Pantages Theater just down the road from where I lived. And I was working there as an usher. And then one day, a kind old lady comes up before we had even opened, walked into the building and was walking to my door. I asked, "Ma'am, what are you doing here? You're not open yet." And she explained she was the audio describer for the show. And I had no idea what that was. And she explained to me what audio description was, what it entailed, and what she did for almost every show at the Pantages. And I said, I want to do that. And so she took my information. We kept in contact. This was Deborah Lewis, and she basically trained me. And I've been working with her and her company ever since, Audio Descriptions Los Angeles, and been doing shows all around LA now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was there something in particular that you found really interesting about audio description when she was explaining it to you that really was like, oh, I want to get into this?
Well, I've always liked work that allows me to help people. Even also all during the pandemic, I was basically volunteering at the Red Cross as well, running the check-ins and delivering blood. At the Pantages is just helping people enjoy a good show. And audiobooks, of course, is how so people who can't read can also enjoy good stories. So audio description was just another layer to that, being able to bring live theater to more people. So that was my biggest draw to it. Plus the challenge of having to do it live. I'd never had to do an actual live thing since high school when I was doing live theater. So I was super excited to get back on board with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like, first of all, you do have a great voice for both audio description and narration. So it makes sense that this would be a really good fit for you. And then second, coming from a theater background and a performance background, I think a lot of those skills translate into the work that you do, both as an audiobook narrator and an audio describer. And what's great about both of the things that you do are these are both services that blind and low vision people really benefit from, because they're all about the audible experience that we are having. So that's awesome. And I guess to get a little bit deeper now into that, you have both work in the audio description field and also in the audiobook space. Obviously, I assume that there's some similarities between and some crossover between those two fields, but there's also going to be some differences. So what are the differences, I guess, in how you prepare for both of those? When you get a project in either one of those fields, how you prepare for those?
Well, prep work is actually very different. Audiobooks, the publisher sends me a prep copy of the book, which is basically not exactly final copies. Most of the times it is the same exact wordage as the final copy, but sometimes there's going to be a major change or just a few wordings or even just one single paragraph that's added at the last second. I get that prep copy for me to peruse and skim. and decide whether or not I even want to do the book. Because I can always say, no, I don't want to do this. Please give it to someone else. And I'm given several weeks and we schedule a time when my audio is due. I record it all, make sure it sounds great, and I send it in. As for audio description, I do a preview thing as well, but it's a preview show. I get to go and see the show at least a week before my audio description performance, where I get to sit in the audience, but I'm sitting not to just enjoy the show, but take extensive handwritten notes. What do the sets look like? What colors are the costumes? What do the costumes look like? What are the face shapes and hairstyles of the actors? All for the pre-show notes that I go through before the show actually starts. And also, so I know what's going to happen in the story, so I'm not surprised when I actually describe it in the actual show.
For audio description, obviously you're doing the same voice because you're doing narration. But for audiobooks, do you do different voices, different characters? I've been reading a lot of the Harry Potter books with Jim Dale. Do you find yourself doing different voices, or what's your process in doing that?
For audiobooks, unique character voices are necessary. Because not every line of dialogue will say which character is saying that. So you have to just infer based on the shaping of the paragraph, and like the next line is this character's dialogue because they were not the previous speaker. So you got to use voices to infer that. So yeah, and that can be a challenge because I have to make a character list of who appears in the books, decide on a voice for that character, and stick to it. I can't suddenly have character A suddenly sound completely different than how they sounded 20 pages ago. So I usually have to record a small sample of what character A sounds like, character B sounds like, so I can have a reference to listen to whenever I forget the correct voice.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I never thought about, just the organization that goes into audiobook production or audiobook narration in that way, that you would have to keep track of all of those different voices and those different characters. Now, kind of going back to audio description and maybe a little bit of crossover in that, because they're both like narration. Because you've done so many audiobooks, and audiobooks are very much about like being very expressive and capturing emotion, and also, doing character voices like we just talked about. Do you ever find the tendency to be overly expressive or emotive while you're doing audio description narration? I mean, obviously, I know that there's not character voices that you're doing, but it's one of those things that I feel like it's a tricky balance, because you want to still have more of a neutral presence, but add to what's going on in a live performance as well. But yeah, I don't know. I guess, are you ever tempted to go to those very expressive places?
Well, actually, being completely neutral isn't always the right thing to do for audio description. That's the main goal, to be neutral, because the actors are the ones carrying most of the weight for the story. Like, they have the dialogue, they're doing all the stage production, stage movement and blocking, and I'm just describing what's physically happening. But the emotions of the scenes do matter. Like, if it's a quiet, somber moment, a character is dying, someone's crying, they're hugging each other, I'm not going to talk loud, loud outdoor voice, but neutral. I'm going to try and match that tone. I'm going to be somber, quiet, slow, and match the pace of the scene. If it's a loud, bombastic musical number and the listener has to hear me over the music, over the screaming, over the shouting and singing, I have to be that loud. So if it's a neutral scene where the emotion is being carried solely by the actor and I don't have to change anything, I'll be neutral. But if it's a quiet scene, I go down. If it's a loud scene, I try and match and go up.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. And if it's like, I feel like with an audio description, it's like that. It's a very subtle like shifts where I feel like you definitely can be I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like you have a little more freedom to be more expressive when you're doing audiobooks. And audio description, you still want to add to what's happening, and you want to still be able to capture the mood of what's happening in a performance, but it has to be done maybe more nuanced, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Audiobooks has a lot more flexibility because you're basically the only storyteller here. You're all the characters, you're all the narrator, and you have to basically deliver everything. Whereas with audio description, you're basically working in tandem with the actors and the orchestra and trying to tell a complete story, all three of you together.
And what have you found in both audiobooks and audio description, some of the challenges that you've encountered in those spaces?
Well, the biggest problem for audiobooks for me, is just basically, the character voices can be a bit of a hurdle, especially if there's too many characters. Then there's only so many voices I can do. I don't have an infinite amount of voices, and they can't to make them all distinct. And some authors just like to throw in characters that have a name, but they're only there to say one line, and they never appear again. And I have to make sure that they sound just different enough that they're not going to be mistaken for anyone else. So that can be a problem. As for audio description, the biggest challenge is the pre-show notes, because I'm there watching the show as it goes. It's not a movie. I can't pause it and consider things, zoom in and try and see what exactly they're wearing. I have to be as quick as possible because they're just going to keep on going and just grab what I can.
I think I was there when you described Peter Pan. I think that was one of your first ones, right?
It was, yes.
And then I think I also went for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which you did also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, those were both very good. And I noticed with Harry Potter, you were describing, I don't know if you did it before the show, but definitely during intermission, you were describing the costumes and things, what they look like, because obviously you don't have time during the actual performance.
Yes, that's correct. I go over the costumes and the sets as well as the makeup and hair style of the actors before the show, and also during intermission if those change in Act 2, which a lot of times they do.
What are some of your favorite shows that you've described?
So far, well, Harry Potter has been quite fun, and it's been mainstay in the area for most of the year so far. Like, it's been here since February, and it's still here, and it's not going to leave until the end of June. So that's been a fun, because it's basically like a Vegas magic show with fire and magic tricks happening almost every scene. So that's a joy. But I also have enjoyed really simple shows, like down at the Kirk Douglas Theater in Culver City. It was just a simple Wizard of Oz play, but it was called El Otro Oz, basically a Spanish-American version of The Wizard of Oz, and it was very creative with its costumes and retelling of the classic story. So I really appreciate that show for just its imagination and telling a story that you're familiar with, yet doing it in its own unique way. And I really like that kind of theater.
Now, one of the things that I've always been curious about, which we haven't asked any of the other live audio describers on this podcast yet, is if you describe a show multiple times, obviously I assume that you have like your audio description script that you go off of. But because it's like live theater and anything can happen, and sometimes there's like subtle changes or sometimes even big changes, have there been times where you've described a show and one time it's described a little bit differently than another time because of something that happened in the moment that you had to kind of pivot on the spot?
Absolutely. It's live theater. Mistakes happen. The only thing that is pre-written are the pre-show notes, the costumes, the sets, and the actors. Even the actors can be different. There are understudies. Every time I go to a show that I describe, including the Harry Potter one, which I've done at least once every month since the beginning of 2025, there are sometimes understudies, and I only have half an hour when I arrive, take a photo of the understudies list of who's playing who this particular performance. I have to flip through the headshots and write a quick description for that actor who's suddenly playing Scorpius. And I just have to do that for that particular show. And as for mistakes, those are the most fun to do. Like at the Geffen Theater, Noises Off, I did that earlier this year. It's a really fast-paced comedy farce where a lot of slapstick comedy is happening all at the same time, like 3 jokes at once all around, and the audience is consistently laughing. But sometimes the actors make mistakes. Like the show I had to describe, an actor had to throw a bed sheet up in the air for someone to catch on a landing above them. But the guy who's supposed to catch it kept missing. So he kept tossing it, catching it, tossing it, catching it, tossing it, catching it. And the audience was laughing their heads off. And there was no dialogue and nothing was happening audibly. So I had to describe, he tosses up, it falls down. He tosses it up, it falls down. He tosses it up, it falls down. Like 6 times before the show continued.
That would be a lot of fun. And that would probably be a really fun show to describe because of how much physical interaction and comedy there is in it.
What are some of your favorite audiobooks that you've gotten to narrate? I know you have a pretty exciting one upcoming that you mentioned to us before the show.
Yes. So I usually get hired to do a lot of fantasy as well as romance. I've got that kind of voice where people like to hear really magical tales from me as well as sweet romantic ones. But the ones I really, really enjoy narrating are like nonfiction biographies and historical books. I've done like one of the first union books I did was all about the 2020 pandemic and how we responded to it as a global society. That one I was really proud of to do. I've also done a biography about what it's like to be a half Puerto Rican, half Indian person living in modern day America and growing up in a post 9/11 America. Those are really interesting, true memoirs that I like to read. But on a less serious note, I love telling really fun stories. Like, for example, this Friday, I'm going to be recording my first ever Goosebumps book. So, yay!
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What are you most looking forward to about doing this audiobook?
So this is the first time where I'm actually going to be working in a professional studio. Right now, I am recording from my own personal recording booth, the little 4x4 box of soundproofed wood and curtaining, a professional microphone with all the wirings and everything. I've been recording over 100 audiobooks just from my home booth here and doing it all from home. But this is Scholastic. Goosebumps is owned by Scholastic, and I'm going to be working at a studio up in the valley, up in North Hollywood, and I'm going to be there with a director and editor who is going to be working with me live instead of me just sitting here in the booth all by myself. And there's going to be snacks too.
Snacks are always a good thing. They make everything better for sure.
That's awesome.
And when you do these recordings from home that you've been doing for the last several audiobooks you've done, there is a director, I believe, right?
There is an option. It's never happened to me, but I know that people who record from home, a lot of publishers also have remote directors available to do like a Zoom call like we're doing now to direct people online. I've never had to do it. I've always been self-directed on every book up until now. The most I've ever had with feedback is when I do co-narrators, when I work with another narrator who gets half of the book. Like if it's a romance between a meet cute a man and woman romance, there are half the chapters are written for a man, the other half are written for the woman character, and the woman character is read by the lady narrator who collaborates with me. We agree on word pronunciations as well as voices. We send each other samples of voices of characters that are in both of our chapters. That's the most coordination I've ever had to do. But other than that, it's been complete self-direction. This is the first time where I'm going to have an actual director and editor with me.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Because normally, do you edit your own work as well, or you send it in and they edit it?
No, I'm expected to send it to them completely completely missing of mistakes as possible. There's this technique of recording called punch and roll. That's the expected technique to be used for audiobooks. Basically, if I make a mistake, I'm supposed to pause, rewind, and then record over the mistake a correct version. And just keep on going. So I submit to them as a correct completed version book as possible. I still make mistakes. Sometimes I say the wrong word. Sometimes I mispronounce a word. Sometimes I say the word that is technically correct, but not the correct pronunciation that they want. Like English is a crazy language. There's like 5 different dictionaries, the Oxford Dictionary, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and every publisher wants you to follow one particular dictionary's pronunciation guide. And so that's not how we want you to pronounce that word. We do it this way. They go over my recordings, make a list of my mistakes, and send it back to me, and I'm supposed to re-record those individual lines, sentences, where the mistakes happen, and send it to them, and then they splice in the corrected versions.
Wow, that's very intricate, and I mean, it'll be so great. I feel like to have an editor for this one.
There's this Goosebumps not going to have any of that because they're going to be live editing it with me. If I make a mistake, they'll stop me and just do it over again. So I expect to be in and out all in one day for once. Usually it takes maybe a week before I'm done with a book.
When you first got into audiobooks, was there any kind of like training or anything you had to do, or you just kind of started auditioning with your voice to get the jobs?
For me, it was just auditioning. When I was first starting out and I was recording in a closet, because I didn't always have this booth, I used the public audition site acx.com, which is basically the open public audition site for audible.com. Any narrator and author can meet there. You can audition for any book that has a posting, and the narrators say yay or nay. And I was lucky enough to find an author who really liked my voice and wanted me to do his entire series, his entire 7-book series. So that was like my first ever project. And as time went along, I kept at it, kept landing work through ACX. And then I realized that there were publishers. I didn't realize that was a thing until much later in my career. And then I submitted at that point I had a good portfolio of completed books. So I submitted my work to them, said, here's what I can do. And they signed me on. And now basically they kind of work like my agent and find me books.
That's a really cool journey that you've been on. And how long have you been doing audiobooks for now?
About 5 or 6 years now.
Okay.
So yeah, you're definitely a pro then.
How many times do you read through it before you record it? Like, I know on books I'm listening to now, they'll say the line slowly and then it'll say like Harry said slowly. And it's like, well, obviously he read that first because he said the line the correct way that it was described. So like if you read it through, do you have to re-record it, or do you like read a chapter first before you record yourself reading it?
So after I've accepted a book, I give the entire book a quick skim, mostly to make a list of the characters and see if there's any description of any specific things that the author wanted this character to sound like. This person has a deep, whispery kind of voice, or does he have an accent? He sounds British, he sounds Irish, he sounds Chinese. I don't know. If not, then I can choose my own voice and go with it. But as for how many times, I read through once, make that list and little pre-recording notes. But even after I do that, sometimes I do stumble upon those kind of lines in the moment. He said slowly like that. I didn't realize that when I was skimming it, and I have to go, oh, and I just go back and re-record and do it slowly. That happens a lot.
And do you ever get pre-record notes, like when you get a project, the publisher or the author will send you, keep these things in mind as you're recording this?
Yes, I have gotten notes like that. Sometimes an author has a specific accent for a character that is not obvious at first and isn't mentioned until maybe the third time we see them, but they should sound like this from the get-go. So I get those kind of notes. So like the most recent one I can think of, I had to make sure that this character sounded French, even though we don't know he's French until like chapter 3. So that was those kind of notes.
I see. And then would you ever want to do audio description for film and TV as well? Because I mean, you have a very good voice that I could totally see working really well for many film and TV projects as well.
I absolutely would love to do film and TV audio description. I know that Deborah currently does audio description TV for several shows. I'm forgetting which ones she does. I think it's mostly game shows and reality shows, but she's talked to me about them, and I'd like to get on board with those too, but also expand into other TV and more film if possible. So if she has connections in there, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, I hope that you get the opportunity to do that at some point in time. And I mean, we've interviewed a lot of like film and TV audio description narrators and writers, and that's a whole similarities to what you already do, but definitely like a little bit of a learning curve. In some ways, nothing too big probably for you.
Do you want to name some of the well-known books that you've narrated? I don't know, maybe some of our listeners are like, I know this guy's voice from somewhere.
I mean, Goosebumps is going to be the first ever mainstream book that I've ever done. Everything up till now has been not in the main media. I'm not like secretly the new narrator of Harry Potter or whatever like that. But hold on. If you go to audible.com and just search my name, Roman Howell, Roman spelled like the Empire, Howell, Howell, and you'll just basically see most of my work that's available there. One of the earliest books I'm quite proud of, The Monster's Bones. That was like one of the first books I did. That's all about the discovery of dinosaur bones and how they basically started the whole museum's industry of America. I've also done, let's see. Oh, yes. I am a huge fan of Lovecraftian horror. And the most recent iteration of that are the Arkham horror series. And they have several novels, and I've done 2 of them. And I hope to do more because they are a blast.
If you could do an audiobook for like one of your favorite books, any book, if you could narrate any book, what would like some of your choices be? We'll start there.
Well, definitely I would want to keep doing more Arkham horror books, but I have very fond memories of a lot of my childhood books. I know that the Magic Treehouse series has been narrated already from beginning to end, and I'm pretty sure it was the author Mary Pope Osborne who narrated them, and she does a wonderful job. But if she's ever willing to let them get re-recorded, I'd love to do them.
Which, is, you never know, is possible because there are definitely some books that I've seen that have multiple versions of recordings by different narrators as well. So that, fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
What do you specifically love about the Arkham horror stuff?
I just loved the creativity of the monsters and the monsterology of all of the Arkham universe, how it was basically created by a bunch of different authors who just went wild with their darkest creations and biggest nightmares brought to life, and how this has just grown and grown into this huge collaborative universe that continues to expand, and authors are still adding to their own little spins and monsters while also pulling from the classics. I just love how it can seemingly never end.
And for audio describing shows, if you had like, let's say 1 or 2 shows that you're like, I would love to describe this show, either because I'm really fond of it or just because I think it would be a fun challenge with how much there is to describe, what shows would you want to describe?
Well, I know that Beetlejuice is coming up next year to the Pantages. I was there when I was an usher, and I thought it was the funniest show I had ever seen, and I can't wait for it to come back. And I'd love, 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 love to describe Beetlejuice again. And also, of course, Beauty and the Beast is coming up in the next season, and that was one of my first ever shows I ever saw. It was actually the first show I ever saw on Broadway. And the show I did for my senior year in high school where I played Cogsworth. And so I would also love the opportunity to describe that show as well.
Nice. Well, hopefully you'll get the opportunity to do both of those shows. And then I guess another related question, when you watch a show and you're not audio describing it, or you're listening to an audiobook that you haven't narrated, do you find it hard to kind of focus because you're paying attention to like, well, let's say you're watching a show and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about how that could be described, or do you feel like you're able to enjoy it? And same thing with audiobooks. Are you thinking about critiquing the narration and kind of paying attention to those little nuanced details as well and that? Or do you feel like you're able to shut your mind off and just enjoy both mediums when you're just a viewer or listener?
So if I'm just there to enjoy the show, so far I've had no problem. I'm still able to just disconnect and just enjoy the performance for what it is. Maybe that'll change in the near future. Who knows? But for now, that's not so bad. Same for audiobooks, unless it's a really bad audiobook. This only happened to me twice so far, where I started an audiobook and the narrator just sounds so bad. It's just like their delivery is so disingenuous or uninterested, or they just feel like they're not telling a story. They're just reading the text. And I can't enjoy this. I want to know how the story goes, but you're doing a terrible job. Bad enough to make me want to stop and never come back.
Yeah, I've definitely had those experiences as well, where the narration is just so disengaging that I'm like, I can't sit here for 6 hours or 10 hours and listen to this.
Even with audio description, sometimes, like in the theater, it's just like, if you're in for a rough time, like in the first 10 minutes or so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You had some bad experience with audio description too?
Yeah, because it's like, there is, I would say the audio description over time has got better, but there are definitely some audio describers that the narration just is not very descriptive, and it doesn't really add to anything. It kind of distracts in a way that you're just like, this is not helpful and it's not engaging, and it just kind of takes you out of it.
For example, I had one the other day described a character as pretty, and I was like, what does that mean though? Yeah. I was like, that doesn't tell me anything.
She's pretty.
And so with audio description, once again, just to clarify, you have notes that you do, but you don't actually write description yourself. You just kind of use your notes as a guidepost and then go with it as you're seeing things happen on stage.
That's correct. The only thing that's pre-written I have printed out and ready to read before every show are the set descriptions, the costume descriptions, and the actors' hairstyles and looks and whatnot. Everything else that actually happens on stage is in the heat of the moment because things can happen. Live theater has mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think would you ever want to try writing audio description as well, out of curiosity?
So I'm not sure what you mean by that. So like a script for an audio describer to
Correct. Like a script for like a movie or a TV show, or even like any kind of like presentation,
Yeah.
Okay.
Because unlike theater, for film and TV, it's all written by someone else, and then the voiceover talent will just read what's written.
All right. I didn't realize that was a job, but yeah, I'd be interested in doing something like that.
I mean, I've tried my hand at it a little bit. It definitely can be so tricky. Cause it's like in TV and film, it's like, there's so many different things to describe. And so and I guess it's the same thing in theater, and just picking like, what are the most important elements of a piece of entertainment to describe? Cause you could literally describe everything. And so I think that can be the challenging part, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For me, I believe the trick for audio description that's what a good thing about pre-show is. I can figure out what's important. I can see that this prop comes up later, and this prop we never see again. So I have to make sure that prop A is mentioned when it's moved across the stage so people know where it is. Such as in that comedy, Noise is Off, the big prop is a plate of sardines, and it's constantly moving around the stage and getting into shenanigans with other actors. So I have to always mention where it is.
Then that's, I guess, the advantage too of, I guess, the difference between like, live audio description and like the TV and film audio description is like, you have that time beforehand to really like kind of give the context for the other things that people need to pay attention to. And in movies, you still are giving context, but you do it, I guess, as you go as well, So I don't know, it's just so interesting because both mediums are so similar, yet there's definitely differences too. And as we kind of like wrap up now, any, I guess, like final thoughts you have, Roman, on the narration process or anything that we haven't discussed yet that you'd like to leave us with?
No, we kind of went over everything I wanted to discuss, like how audio description is the most straightforward action as you can, focusing on the elements that are important, whereas audiobooks, you can spend entire pages describing just how a flower is colorful.
And I think that's really like a cool thing about audiobooks is you can really take the time to like paint that picture with words and voice, and you actually have the liberty of time to be able to do that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And then like, when you're doing like live audio descriptions, like you still have to paint that picture, but you have way less time to be able to, do that too.
You got to make it the barest amount to fit in the spaces between dialogue or when the music is quiet. And I find the trick is to find the right verb that evokes the right emotion. Rather than he punches him, if it's funny, if it's supposed to be funny, he could slap him. Or if it's supposed to be really violent, he strikes him.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, that brings up another question. With your experience having done so many audiobooks, obviously you get introduced and exposed to a very wide range of vocabulary. Have you found that helpful in doing live audio description of being like, oh, I can pull out this vocabulary now because I remember this from this book or this moment?
It can, but the problem with vocabulary is not everyone knows your big fancy words. So I can't pull out a 5-syllable $20 word in the middle of spam a lot. People are just going to be confused. So yes, reading so much has expanded my vocabulary, and I've seen so many different narrators tell stories in their own unique voice and unique way, and some are very creative in their approaches. Unfortunately, with audio description, I'm kind of restricted to short sentences that I have to make as descriptive as possible while allowing the actors to carry the story. But I can understand, yeah, my vocabulary has been expanding over the years.
Yeah, no, it's just cool how I think that like one skill that you have in one area can benefit you in another area. And it's cool to see with how kind of there's like that segue for you in the types of narration that you've been doing.
I do remember specifically when I saw Harry Potter, the Polyjuice Potion scene was really well described, and I had my little telescope thing, and I was watching the body parts retract and things, and you were describing at the same time, and that was really, really cool. So everything you've been talking about in this podcast kind of, specifically in that scene, kind of manifested itself.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. Well, Roman, it's been such a pleasure having you here. We really appreciate you kind of sharing your experience, your insights, and also just, sharing your voice because it is such a great narration voice. Your Goosebumps audiobook is going to be coming out soon. Is there anything else that you want to plug, or if people want to follow you, like how can they, keep up with what you're doing?
So you can easily find my work on audible.com. If you just search my name there, you'll see all my released works. Roman, like the Empire, Howell, Howell. And that's where you can find my narrator's work. You can also follow me on Instagram if you wanna, at Roman Audiobooks. And also for audio description, I work for Audio Description Los Angeles with Deborah Lewis and others. We serve audio description at many theaters, including the Pantages Theater in Hollywood, the Amundsen, LA Opera, the Kirk Douglas down in Culver City, the Hollywood Bowl, the Pasadena Playhouse, and we just added a new Pasadena theater called Noise Within. That's a new venue that just had our first show there. So you can check that out if you like. And we keep a contact sheet going for that you can add your email address to, and we'll reach out to you about our shows that are available that will be describing that we have already scheduled. And of course, even if we are not scheduled for a particular show at a venue, you can reach out to that venue and request a show that you can attend to be audio described. You talk to the theater, they talk to us and get us to come over. It's a weird chain that has to go. You can't talk to us, you have to ask the theater, and then the theater talks to us.
Yeah, that's and we always talk about, me and Alex talk about a lot about, advocating for ourselves and our needs, like don't just wait around, but we can be proactive in doing that. And so what you just described about reaching out to the venue and telling them that this is something that we need is something that's always an option. And a lot of people don't always know that. So thanks for bringing that back to mind for us.
Absolutely. And if you want to reach out to us, you can find our website at audiodescriptionsolutions.com, where you can contact us and we can actually add you to our email list so you can get an up-to-date list on what shows we'll be describing in the future.
Perfect. And we will go ahead and link all of this in the description below. And if you have any questions for me and Alex about anything that we discussed today, or any question that you want us to relay to Roman, you can also email us at darkroomfilmcast@gmail.com. Once again, that's darkroomfilmcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Instagram and subscribe to us on YouTube as well.
And yeah, Instagram and YouTube are also Darkroom Filmcast. And we'd like to thank Matt Lauterbach and All Senses Go for making captions available for this episode, as well as BlindCan for helping out with editing.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Roman, once again, thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time on The Dark Room.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, bye. Thanks for having me.